Just George again, doing our second in a series of Just George Does Florida. Today we're going to talk about an unknown fact, or some people may know about it. It's when Germany attacked Florida in World War II, believe it or not. In the early war, the Germans had sent the U-boats all across the Atlantic to do their U-boat hits on all the freighters and the cargo ships going to England. And they found out that the east coast of America was a big target because nobody turned their lights off, there were no blackouts, and everybody didn't believe anyone could attack America across the Atlantic. So the German submarines would shoot ships down off of the coast of Jacksonville, believe it or not, down to Vero Beach and even into the Gulf of Mexico. Many ships got sunk by German U-boats. And one of the U-boat fleets actually come aboard, put 3 men on the shore. So we were attacked and invaded, and their job was to blow up the railroad tracks, the bridges, and other communications and transportation. But they were caught within 3 hours of being seen coming on shore by civilians, actually, who were out watching, because they were out every night watching for U-boats to sink the ships, because you could see the fires right off the Jacksonville coast. So I thought that was a little bit of history that most people don't know about. In the Tampa Bay area, we have 35 airports still in existence that were built during World War II to train bomber and fighter pilots. Tampa International used to be Drew Field, and it's still called Drew Park, believe it or not. And up until recently, some of the old buildings were still there from World War II. MacDill Air Force Base was built in 1935, and they had a saying there when they were training the bomber pilots, 1 a day in Tampa Bay, because they were new pilots and many of them crashed. I mean, obviously it wasn't 1 a day, but that was a saying that came out of it. And down in Bradenton, all the way up to Crystal River, Zephyr Hills, all those airports that are there today, the municipal and regional airports, and even Linder Field out in Plant City, Lakeland area was built during that time. In fact, we just did an air show there this week, and the Sun and Fun Fly-In, it's called, and they bring all these vintage warplanes in and everything. So the area, just Tampa Bay, is full of history about that. Now, Jacksonville has a Naval Air Station where pilots were trained in the carrier fleet's base. Pensacola Naval Air Station is up where the home of the Blue Angels is. Eglin Field is in the northwest corner of the state of Florida, and that's where Jimmy Doolittle was trained on the B-25 bombers to do the raid on Tokyo. And they modified the planes, took weight off of it, and taught them how to take short takeoff landings and all. They didn't have to teach them to land because it was a one-way trip. When they left the carrier, they were going to go bomb Japan and then had to go to China and bail out because there wasn't enough fuel. So it was almost a suicide mission. But we did bomb Japan at that time, and only 1 crew didn't make it back. Everyone else did. So to me, that's very interesting. It's historical. There's all kinds of history here in this area. There was a Civil War battle up at Dade City. Okay. So even again in the Tampa Bay area, we have Fort DeSoto Park, which is a recreation area now. But if you go down there, you can see the old, they're not cannons, they're not howitzers, but they're artillery pieces to defend Tampa Bay during the war with Spain when we were fighting in Cuba. And then Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders trained down in South Tampa. So the area is just full of historical information. Up in the northwest corner, we have the Naval Stores area, which is where they grew all the pine trees, loblolly pines and shortleaf and longleaf pines for the turpentine industry. So when they were building the ships in Pensacola, they had all the necessary materials to caulk the decks and put it all together, because we were making the transition then between sailing vessels and motorized vessels and going to steam. So they still needed to repair the old ships. So they grew, that's why there's so many pine trees in northern Florida, is they actually grew them there to get the turpentine out of it and to work on the ships with. So I find all this very interesting, especially the part that the Germans, we were actually attacked in World War II, and they actually put a landing party ashore and didn't do any damage. I'll repeat that. They did not do any damage, but they got turned by citizens with binoculars watching for ships to burn in the Atlantic. So just a little few unknown facts about Florida. So I hope you enjoyed them. And again, this is Just George doing Florida.